Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Surely You Can't Be Serious podcast, discussing and debating the iconic and the forgotten of 80s and 90s pop culture, with your co-hosts, James D. Graves and Jason Colvin.
Okay, welcome back, baseball and podcast fans. We are here for our second episode on Bull Durham versus Major League. I'm here with my friend Jason Colvin.
D, how you doing? How's your wife and my kids?
Love it. All right, let's dive back into these movies.
All right, we ready to talk about?
Yeah, let's talk about the love interest now, all right?
All right.
Okay, so Bull Durham, we have Annie Savoy played by Susan Sarandon.
The term in baseball for a groupie, the way they call them an Annie. And Savoy has to do with a bat, the Savoy special. So Annie Savoy. And Susan Sarandon got this part. The studio didn't want to hire her. They thought she was too old and not sexy enough.
Right. So they sent her in to talk to the studio executive wearing a low-cut, incredibly tight-fitting dress, and she leaned over his desk for about half an hour and walked out with the part.
She was 41 when she did this movie.
Yeah.
Also considered for the part of Annie Savoy, Kim Basinger, Ellen Barkin, Kate Capshaw, Gina Davis, Isabella Rossellini, Melanie Griffith, Carrie Fisher, Deborah Winger, Michelle Pfeiffer, Kelly McGillis, Mary Steenburgen, Glenn Close, Kay Lenz, and Pamela Stevenson.
So every actress in Hollywood was considered for this part. I think Susan Sarandon is the perfect fit for Annie Savoy. I can't imagine anybody else doing this part. I would say Renee Russo, because they are the two ladies who I thought got better looking as years went on. But Renee Russo, at the time that this movie came out, she didn't have the age for it yet. She wasn't old enough. I like that Susan Sarandon is kind of that, for lack of a better word, cougar, looking for somebody to manipulate kind of character. So it really fit that she was a little bit older than the player that she seduced.
Absolutely. She had to be older, wise, and sexy.
Yeah, you had to have a little bit of wisdom in the eyes. And I think that of all of those, whatever 103 actresses that you just mentioned, that she was the one that had the right wisdom about her face.
Could you see Princess Leia as Annie Savoy?
No, it would have been weird.
We always like to imagine the alternate universe where we have Kurt Russell, Anthony Michael Hall, and say Ellen Barkin as Annie. It's a totally different movie.
Woke up one day, what did I find?
So the love interest in Major League is played by Renee Russo. Character's name is Lynn Wells. Renee Russo was actually pretty well a newcomer when this movie came out. She was not widely known.
Her first movie.
She had done a couple of little things before this, but this was her first major motion picture. And she went on to do a ton of stuff, including one of your favorites, Lethal Weapon 3 and 4.
Right. Thor.
Yeah, she was mother to Thor, and then she was also in Tin Cup with Kevin Costner from Bull Durham.
Oh, that's right. I knew that, but I don't know why I didn't make the connection. Have you ever seen The Thomas Crown Affair?
Yeah, and hello.
Yeah, she's good in that.
Yes. Google search. And so here's my question for you. Yep. Let's talk about each one of these movies separately, but is the love story necessary? Because we're talking about baseball movies here, right? And so why do we have a love story? I mean, like Tombstone, like the movie Tombstone it's a Western. Why the heck are we having a love story in it? You get rid of that whole love story and it's a better movie, as good as it already is. So here's my question. For Major League, is the love story necessary?
No.
I agree with you. I love Renee Russo. I love the part that she plays in this. She's gorgeous to look at, but I think you can get rid of the love story and it's still a great movie. It's just kind of a way of showing how Jake Taylor is trying to get his life back together, and that's about it. On the flip side of that, if you get rid of the love story, you don't have the scene in the attorney's apartment, in the fiance's apartment, and I think that is one of the best scenes in the movie.
Jake is a professional baseball player.
That scene, so he intrudes upon a dinner party that's already happening, and he joins the conversation, and she says, "Wow, you play baseball, huh? Where do you play?" And he's like, "Well, here in Cleveland." She's like, "They still have a team?"
Yeah, they have uniforms and everything.
And she said, I hear the ball players make great money. And he said, well, that depends on how good you are. And she said, well, how good are you? And he said, I make the league minimum. At that time, in 1989, the league minimum, $68,000.
Right.
The average salary in America, $30,000.
Right. So you're making twice. Yeah, it's not a bad gig in the late 80s. Okay, so to the love story in Bull Durham, is the love triangle thing necessary for this movie?
Absolutely.
Absolutely agree with you on that one. For sure. I think it makes the movie, because the love story between Susan Sarandon and Nuke is not really the love story. It is this kind. He is just kind of this middle figure in the love story between Crash and Annie.
That's right. The fact that Annie and Crash end up together is the whole arc of the story. That's where we're going.
Absolutely.
And they're made for each other.
Yeah, I mean, you've got two wise folks who love the game of baseball, who are just, looking to make it one more time.
Right.
I want to bring heat.
Okay. The movie Bull Durham was shot in October and November of 1987.
Yes.
There's tons of scenes where you're watching, you can see their breath.
It's supposed to be the hottest summer on record, but that it's...
The announcer says it's the hottest summer on record, and yet Crash takes his catcher's mask off in a scene, and he's steaming, right?
Right.
And then you can see their breath. The nightmare scene where Nuke is on the mound, and he's pitching in nothing but his jockstrap.
Yeah, and the garter.
Yeah, and the garters. Tim Robbins said, I was freezing cold, and they had to they lubed him up with something that made him greasy, because he said, I was freezing to death.
Yeah, so, he was supposed to be sweaty, but he just had Vaseline all over him.
Right.
So another scene in the movie is the scene where they're so exhausted and they're just like, we just need a night off. And Crash is like, I can get your rain out. And they're like, there's not a cloud in the sky. He goes, bet you $100 I can get your rain out. And then they go, and the drunk playing that they're doing, I mean, if that's acting, if they're not actually drinking, they did a phenomenal job, because they look trashed. So what happens in the movie is they set the sprinklers off in order to flood the field, right? And they get the rain out. Well, this is based on something that actually happened to Ron Shelton when he was in the minor leagues. They were down in Texas. They were actually hanging out and partying with some of the Amarillo players, and they decided they didn't want to play the next day. And so they went down and they did the exact same thing. They set off the sprinkler system, totally flooded the field. The only problem was the Amarillo owner happened to have access to a helicopter. And so he flew the helicopter over there and dried the field out, and they still had to play completely hungover the next day.
Ron Shelton said, so they went and turned on the sprinklers, and the scene was supposed to kind of end there with all the ball players kind of around. And Kevin Costner's like, you know what I would do if I was him? I'd run and go dive in the dirt. And he's like, well, it's freezing cold, but if you want to do it, I'll film it. So they set it up, and that was kind of all on Kevin Costner. And that really makes the scene, the joy, the boyish joy of sliding around in the dirt,
Right. It's a game. Have fun. It's supposed to be fun.
It's fun, GD. So
what does he know about having fun? I'm young. I have fun.
So there's a ritual that Annie passes a note back and forth to the dugout a couple of times.
Yeah.
Once she tells Nuke that he's not been in his back enough, and Ron Shelton talks about how they used to do this all the time. But one of the times, Crash writes a note to Annie, gives it to the kid, he delivers it to her. Well, Millie reads it to her, right?
Yeah.
And when she reads it, she says, what does it say? She said, well, it says, I want to make love to you, Crash. Well, if you watch what he writes.
Yeah, I was going to say, I saw it. That's not what he wrote down.
he writes, let's F sometime. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, good job for Millie for editing that one. There's an unsung hero there. Millie, I think, is just a sweet little piece of this movie. She's just so enjoyable and genuinely comfortable with herself, and I love Millie in this movie.
Yeah, I do too. Ron Shelton said that she was very popular among the actors because of her looks. So
right.
At the very beginning, when Nuke and Crash meet, they are both at a bar, and Annie turns and she looks and she says, who is that? And he's like, well, that's their young pitcher. He said, who's he dancing with? And she says, all of them, I think. So he has this dance scene where he's dancing with all these girls.
Right.
Choreographed that scene? Yeah,
Paul Abdul. And she was supposed to, she was like, I thought I was going to have 2 lines out of this. And Ron Shelton's like, I never agreed to that. And she flipped right on out.
She flipped out. He said the last time he saw, she was walking out screaming.
But I mean, really, looking at that scene, at the dancing that's going on, was there really choreography to that? I mean, that looked like the worst dancing I've ever seen. How did Paula Abdul choreograph that bit?
I love this. Kevin Costner, I saw, he was talking to Dan Patrick about when he stepped up to hit for the first time, right? He's in uniform and, he's the big movie star and he's out there with all these guys who can play baseball. A lot of minor league players, a lot of college level players who are out there as extras and stuff. And so he said it was batting practice. And the first time he swung, he swung and missed. The second time he swung and it was a line drive, but he said it fell in like a limp beep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Then the third one he hit out of the ballpark.
Nice.
And so he said the first two he was like, oh no. And then when he hit that third one, he was like, oh, thank you,
Right. Well, and they did get local college players to be the extras for the team and for the opposing teams, but in the stands, they got those extras from a concert. Like they came out of a Pink Floyd concert, and
right.
you can see them. They're wearing Pink Floyd T-shirts out there in the Bull Durham stands.
I really appreciate this about Ron Shelton. So when he hired actors, he wanted people that had either played baseball or loved baseball or both. And as a ball player, I really appreciate that, right?
Right.
That makes a difference when I view this movie. Now, we'll talk here in a minute whether I think Tim Robbins ever looks like that he can throw over 80 miles per hour. I don't think he looks that way.
Right.
But one of the things he did when he auditioned actors to play in this movie is in the interview room, he would set a baseball down. And because people are uncomfortable during the audition process, if they found something that they were comfortable with, i.e., a baseball, they would go over, pick it up, kind of rub it, hold it in their hand. I know that's what I would do. I'd pick up that ball. I'd be rubbing it. Right.
Right. Yeah.
And he said he didn't even have to audition the people that picked up a ball because he knew that's who he was looking for.
Perfect. That is awesome. So on that note, in Major League, they got some Major League players to be extras in that movie as well, but some key parts. The opponents for the Yankees, the guy that they called Haywood, was played by Peter Vukovich. Peter Vukovich was the former pitcher for the Milwaukee Brewers and never hit a single home run in his life. He had been in his Major League career, he had never hit a home run. I don't know about his, maybe in Little League or something. But he was barely even on base because the American League has a designated hitter rule, which allows them to use a designated hitter.
That's right. So this guy is not some scrub. This guy won the 1982 Cy Young, which is the highest award you can get as a pitcher, right?
Right.
He was an incredible ball player, just wasn't a hitter. But when you look at him, clearly, every baseball player at some point growing up, you're a third baseman and a pitcher, and you hit and you pitch, and at some point you deviate and you become what you are.
Right.
When he swings a bat, you can tell this dude can hit.
And he was based on the former Yankees catcher Thurman Munson,
right,
who is also featured just kind of in the background in Bull Durham in a kind of little shrine that Annie Savoy has. The story was that Annie had a difficult time, maybe a father's funeral or something like that, and then went and saw Thurman Munson.
Yeah, that was supposed to be the backstory to Annie. They cut all this, but that, it had to do with the relationship of her dad, and she was a fan of Thurman Munson. Thurman Munson was actually killed in a plane crash. Yankee catcher, well-known player.
Right. The last scene, the famous scene where Jake Taylor calls his shot.
If you're not a baseball fan, you may not be familiar with this. This is something that Babe Ruth did.
Yeah. Anybody who was an adult at that point would have known that. Yeah. But now it is world famous that Babe Ruth, when he was playing for the Yankees, called his shot and then hit it.
And that's what that scene is playing off of. The fact that you should know Babe Ruth pointed to the outfield like, I'm going to hit this ball out. Jake Taylor does the same thing, and you expect that here's this moment. He's going to try and jack this.
Yeah.
So when he lays down the bunt, it's a complete surprise, and that's what it's...
And it's brilliant, too. And they laid the foundation so well with that scene when they first arrive at the Major League Stadium, and Jake thinks he's all alone out there on the field, and he calls his shot and smashes it and runs the bases as though he's hit a home run. And then Willie Mays Hayes and Ricky Vaughn are clapping for him.
Oh, you really got a hold of that one.
Yeah, I was out of here.
That was out of here, man.
It was out of here.
One of the things I thought was interesting about this, so Charlie Sheen, I think, is very effective. His motions, you can tell this guy's a ball player. And I believed it when they said he could throw hard, because I'm watching him. I'm like, man, this guy can throw hard. But one of the things that they did is they moved the pitcher's mound to kind of give the illusion of speed. They moved it 10 feet closer.
Yes.
So normal baseball mound is 60 feet, 6 inches from the plate. They moved it 10 feet closer. So it looked, and then they did a lot of camera work from behind the catcher. But loved the scene where he's practicing with that 10 fake baseball player, and he throws a pitch and it takes the guy's head off. Yeah.
That's awesome. Scene before that hits him in the groin, and then the guy falls. It's brilliant.
In real life, Margaret Whitten, who plays Rachel Phelps,
Yes.
she was a real life Yankee season ticket holder.
Oh, nice.
She's a baseball fan.
That's great.
Home run for Bert Brooks.
Also, in real life, the billboard with the bull offering the free steak for whoever hits it,
Yeah.
they actually still have that now. And if it gets tagged by home run, the batter gets a steak. If he hits the grass, he gets a free salad.
I love that. And that was totally created by the movie Bull Durham.
Yeah, they loved it so much they kept it.
In the original trailer for Major League, they talk about how they're all at dinner, and Charlie Sheen says, they're talking about his pitching day, and Jake Taylor says, that ball would not have been out of a lot of parks. And Ricky Vaughn says, name one. And he says, Yellowstone.
Right. Yes.
That was in the trailer, and we all knew it from the trailer, but
Yes.
it never made it to the movie.
Exactly.
But they decided, it was popular enough and people knew it enough that they actually inserted it into Major League 2.
I think there was probably a bit of an outcry because that line from the trailer may have been the reason that a whole lot of people went to go see that movie in the first place. I mean, it's a classic line that's not actually in the movie. It's hysterical.
Why would they cut that? It's so funny. I don't know why they would cut that.
Coming or not, homeboy.
So also on Bull Durham, in the scene where they go outside when they've met for the first time and he throws him a baseball and says, hit me with this.
Yes.
And then he says, I hear you couldn't hit water if you fell out of a effing boat.
Yeah.
Tommy Lasorda, the guy who was the manager for the Dodgers, actually said this in 1984.
Tommy Lasorda.
Tommy Lasorda. I love Tommy Lasorda.
That's a great line. And that scene is so funny.
Oh my gosh.
When Crash and Nuke meet for the first time, they're going to fight, and Crash is already in his head from the moment they step outside. Come on, Meat. You're starting to think about it already, and how embarrassing it would be to miss in front of everybody. And he said, let's see that $1 million arm, because I got a good idea about that 5-cent head of yours. Brilliant.
So many classic lines in all of these. Also, just a quick side note, the costume designer found out, I mean, Crash Davis is such an awesome character, but she found out that Ron Shelton's number was the number 8. And so she made that Crash Davis's number for the movie.
That's really cool. So I heard Ron Shelton talking about they were on a tight budget, and everything that they got costume wise for the actors in Bull Durham, they got at Goodwill.
Wow.
So Kevin Costner's outfit when they fight, that bomber jacket, khakis, the golf shirt, she basically told Ron Shelton to get undressed and give Kevin Costner your clothes. Those were the clothes that he wore. That's his
great.
jacket and his shoes.
Yeah.
And then he said he sat down with Tim Robbins, and we're like, okay, here's what we're going for with your character. We want a third-rate John Travolta, right? So they always had him in kind of these leisure suits and rock and roll T-shirts. Tim Robbins was the one who picked the T-shirts. So the Iron Maiden, the Girls, all that, he picked those rock and roll T-shirts, which I secretly love.
Okay, so let's talk about some of the more memorable quotes from these two movies. You go first.
This is not a very memorable quote, but for whatever reason, my wife and I say this to each other all the time. Anytime I look at her and she's like, well, what do you think about this dress or whatever? And I say, well, you look cute. she will say back to me, baby ducks are cute. I want to be exotic and mysterious. We love that line. We say that all the time to each other.
One of the lines that I just grabbed out of the blue is, this son of a is throwing a 2-hit shutout and he's shaking me off. Can you believe that?
Yeah.
Charlie, here comes the deuce. And when you speak of me, speak what?
Ron Shelton said that actually happened to him. The catcher told him that he was going to throw a curveball. And he said, he was like, what? He just couldn't believe it. And when it happened, the guy threw him a big old fat curveball. He said he didn't swing because he didn't trust the catcher. He didn't believe it.
That's what I mean, that's the thought I have each time because he does it twice. He does it twice in the movie. Like first, he wants to announce his presence with authority, and it's the fastball. Right. And then he does it again when Lelouch is excited about his curveball.
Right. Yeah. And he does that over-exaggerated shake-off. Yeah. Just a quick baseball story.
Yeah.
I grew up playing baseball in high school. I was on a very good team. We were actually ranked in USA Today's top 25 at one point.
Ooh.
But we stole signs one time from our opposing team, right?
Oh, you stole okay, I got you now. Yes, stole the signal signs, yes.
Right. So, I mean, the Houston Astros are in a world of hurt right now because they would steal them electronically and digitally with a camera and stuff like that. Well, we were just sitting in the dugout. The opposing pitcher would look at his coach in the opposite dugout, and if the coach's legs were straight, it was fastball. If they were crossed, it was curved, and we picked it up. And the way we relayed it to the hitter was, so if you were up to bat and we said, come on, D, let's go, D. Come on, D, you're the best, D. That meant fastball. We said, let's go, Graves. That meant curve. And we destroyed that team that day because we stole their pitches and they didn't know what had happened.
Kids, scare 'em.
All right, but another funny moment to me, one of the funniest moments of the entire movie is when the coach tosses all the bats in the shower and he says, anyone not in the shower in 10 seconds is going to get fined $100.
It's brilliant.
He calls them lollygaggers.
Yes. You lollygag on the field. You lollygag off the field. What does that make them, Larry?
Lollygaggers.
Lollygaggers.
Another line from that scene that we quoted all the time on my baseball team was, it's a simple game.
You throw the ball. You hit the ball. You catch the ball.
Okay, so one of my favorite lines, of course, we've already mentioned this, but when Harris says, are you trying to tell me Jesus Christ can't hit a curveball?
Dang it, you took mine. I think that may be the most memorable line from the movie for sure. In relation to that, I say, F you, Joe Boo. I hit the ball myself.
Actually, the speech that Charlie Sheen gives Lou Brown after he thinks he's cut.
Oh, yeah.
When he barges into his office, flips the chair, his speech is very controlled. He's like, let me tell you something, Mr. Brown. I'm going to catch on somewhere. And when I pitch against you, every time I'm going to up your beep, beep, beep. Right. Yep. And then he throws that ball about 1,000 miles an hour at the locker behind him. Mm-hmm. And of course, it turns out he's being pranked. But
right. And Lou Brown is not
awesome.
Phased at all.
He doesn't even blink.
Yeah, so that one is very similar to the other line that I've got here for this one. I'm just going to go for it. You ever tank another play like you did today, and I'm going to cut off your nuts and shove them down your throat.
Coffee, anything?
This movie is it's so full of the trash talking stuff that we as guys say to each other all the time. Both of the movies just chocked full of it.
I love that about it because it's very real, right? So particularly Bull Durham, well, both of these movies really, they take us where we don't get to go, right? We go to the pitcher's mound, we go to the meeting, we go to the locker room, we hear the conversations that actually happen. And it's not about baseball. It's about girls and partying and what things are happening, like the candlestick scene, or when Dorn goes out and tells him basically win the whole effing thing, even though
he knows.
Just slept with his wife, right?
Right. I just got one thing to say to you. Strike this mother effer out.
There you go. I like the line in Bull Durham when he's telling Nuke how to hold a baseball. He's like, hold it like an egg, right? It's an egg.
Yes.
So when he comes out,
I held it like an egg.
He's like, oh yeah, he scrambled it too.
He scrambled it so look, he hit the effing bull. Guy gets a free steak.
I love it when he says, man, anything that goes that far ought to have a stewardess on it. Oh, we could quote all night. These movies are really, truly one of the great quotable movies of all time. One of the lines in Major League when he says, the guys in the stands are like, it's too high. What do you mean too high? Too high. The trajectory of the ball is too high. What's the difference? It's out of here.
That's a great part of Major League is that they cut to the fans, because I got to say, I've tried to figure out who the main character is in Major League, and I can't figure it out. I can't I think it's Cleveland. I think Cleveland might be the main character in the movie because it's a story about them and their poor, pathetic team that everybody knows is pathetic, and that's the Cinderella story that we get. And so that's why you have these scenes where it cuts to the guys, up in the stands where there's only 4 people and they're doing the wave by themselves, or the guys who are working the grounds, who are actually father and son, by the way. I don't know if you know that. Actual father and son. And then Neil Flynn, who is nobody at the time, is one of the construction guys who's like these effing whatever he's throwing the F-bomb and whatever he says. He went on to be the janitor in Scrubs, which was a pretty major part, and now he's playing the dad in The Middle, which is, it's interesting to see those guys who's their starting point, who have gone on to do great things like him, and also obviously Wesley Snipes and Rene Russo.
I love the line also from Bull Durham where he tells Nuke, he says, "Don't think it can only hurt the ball club."
One last thing. You're going to have to learn your cliches. You're going to have to study them. We got to play it one day at a time. It's pretty boring. Of course it's boring. That's the point. Write it down. You see that scene, and then you see the last scene when he's in the major leagues and he's doing his interview, and then you watch any player doing an interview in professional sports after that point, and you're like, oh my gosh, he's learned his cliches, because everybody's always about the team.
Yep.
But I guess it's not everybody enjoyed the movie.
Really?
Yeah.
I mean, who do you know that didn't enjoy it?
Well, Mickey Mantle. You were telling me this story.
Oh yeah, that's right. I need to tell you this story. Okay, thank you. You teed it up for me, and I didn't even see it coming.
That's right. You want me to do it again?
Will you please tell me when you're going to throw me the fastball? When you speak of me, speak well, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so Mickey Mantle didn't enjoy it. So he was on with a late night talk show. I don't know if it was Letterman or somebody else, but they were asking him, "Hey Mickey, did you see this new funny baseball movie called Bull Durham?" And he said, "Yeah, I saw it." And they were like, "What'd you think, Mick? It was really funny, right?" And he's like, "Yeah, yeah." And his reaction was sort of, "Yeah, I saw it, And the host could tell, "What, Mick, you didn't think this movie was funny?" And so he finally pinned him down, and Mickey was like, "No, I didn't really think it was funny. I thought it was sad."
Sad.
Yeah.
How could it be sad?
So the host is like, "Sad? What are you talking about?" It made me sad because that guy could play. Right. Referring to Crash Davis. He could hit. And it just made him sad to think about all the friends that he had in the minor leagues that were stuck behind guys like Mickey Mantle, who never made it to the big time but could play. I just thought that was a really interesting perspective on the movie.
Okay, so it's time for Final Judgment. You ready?
Let's go to Final Judgment.
Okay. We've done rock and roll. We've done pop. We've done alternative. I don't anticipate that we're going to do an episode on jazz. But here's the thing. I like jazz. I didn't used to. I didn't understand it, and it wasn't for me. But at some point, I've encountered some live jazz when I was bartending. And I was like, wait, that's pretty good. And then I developed a taste for it, and I enjoyed it. But I still love rock and roll, okay? Bull Durham is jazz. Bull Durham is smooth and sweet and gets you little touches of flavor that you just aren't going to get in your standard hard rock song. And I think it's fantastic.
Yeah.
I love it. Major League is rock and freaking roll, man. Yeah. It is Wild Thing, make my heart sing, kick butt the whole time. Simple, straightforward Cinderella story, but filled with the comic genius that any guy who's been on a baseball, who's been on any kind of sports team can just dive into. And so I know this is not right. I know this is not fair. I have to call this a tie. I can't pick because I love jazz. I love the poetry of Bull Durham. I love the lessons and the two teachers and the conflict in their relationship. It's just so beautiful as the way that it plays out. I love that story, but it kind of peters out, it just kind of slowly, like a jazz song, just, you don't get some sort of hard rock ending where they're crescendo. It's Nuke goes on and then there's more story about Crash, and it's not this climactic ending, but I still love it. But with Major League, you get you get two climactic endings. You get calling the shot and you get give him the heater. It's so perfect a guy movie. They're both very guy movies, but I think Major League is a guy movie, and I think that Bull Durham is a movie that both men and women can enjoy.
That's good. That's good. You're kind of close to my comparison as well. But here's what I came up with on these two movies. All right.
Okay.
So I love them both. These are two of the best baseball movies ever made. I appreciate these two movies as being great baseball movies. So for me, Major League is Bon Jovi. It makes music for the masses. It makes baseball accessible. It makes baseball fun. Yep. It's what everybody loves. Everybody can enjoy this movie, right? Bull Durham is like the Police. Okay.
Wow.
Great music.
Yeah.
Great songs.
Yep.
If you're a musician, you probably appreciate them a little more than the average person does.
Yeah.
The craftsmanship there.
Yep.
Right. So as a ball player, the ins and outs and the intricacies that are demonstrated in Bull Durham, I lean Bull Durham. I got to tell you, Bull Durham is a little bit more, it's closer to my heart for whatever reason.
Right.
Let me tell you, there's a scene in Bull Durham. I saw Ron Shelton talk about this. There's a scene where Nuke, when he gives up a bunch of runs, they pull him out. And as he's walking to the locker room, Ron Shelton, there's like a 3-second scene where Nuke is walking. And he said the only reason he had that scene in the movie is because he wanted spikes on concrete. He wanted that sound. And for me, that sound is meaningful to me. It probably means nothing to you or anybody else. But those are the small hidden gems of Bull Durham that a ball player appreciates. Yeah. So I love the love story. I love Major League. I just love Bull Durham just a little bit more.
I understand. And those things that you're talking about, that like the cleats on the concrete, there are little nuances associated with the sport and even just the time of year that it's played. The fact that baseball is played in the spring and the weather is a particular way and the sun sets at a particular time, and there is a romance about baseball that you don't get with indoor sports.
Sure.
That you don't necessarily get with stadium sports like football. There's something magical that I think they do a great job of capturing in Field of Dreams as well, but certainly Bull Durham, they capture that essence. I can't fault you for leaning that way at all. My wife will agree with you. Bull Durham is the best. My 10-year-old will tell you that Major League is the best baseball movie of all time.
Well, and I can't blame you for that. We want to hear from you guys.
Yeah, please check us out on Twitter. Check us out on Facebook. The Surely You Can't Be Serious podcast on both of those, at Shirley's Podcast, if you happen to be searching that way. But yeah, check us out and tell us what you think. Tell us if you think that there are other baseball movies out there that are comparable to this one. There were a lot coming out at this time, so we'd love to hear what you've got to say on this.
Hit us up on Twitter. Hit us up on Facebook. Let us hear from you. If you've got a great idea for a podcast you'd like for us to do, let us know that.
A good friend of mine used to say, this is a very simple game. You throw the ball, you catch the ball, you hit the ball. Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose, sometimes it rains. Think about that for a while. All music, images, and movie clips are used for the purposes of commentary and education in conjunction with the Fair Use Agreement under the U.S. copyright law.